Have you seen the trailer for the new Quentin Tarantino movie?
I have. Do you know about what was that guy's name? Ted Manson?
Oh, is that
Sharon Tate?
Is that what it's about?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's going to be so bloody.
Oh,
it's going to be it's already a super the story. What's it? Charles Manson? Ted Manson? What's the guy? What's this?
Ted Bundy. You're confusing Ted Bundy with Charles Manson.
Who was the guy?
The Nazi thing, though, that made me think it was like he's like using a flamethrower on Nazis.
I think he is a fictional actor during this era. But it's about like Sharon Tate is a character in this movie.
Is that Margot Robbie?
Yes.
Character?
And her murder was
brutal. And of course, it's Quentin Tarantino, so you're going to see every aspect of it.
It like he's so like gory that I'm actually like
You're like getting hot just thinking about being in the movie theater and watching it.
Like maybe this is a DVD for Apple TV.
I watched Django in the movie theater and like I think I was too close to it because at the end I kind of felt nauseous a little bit.
His movies are so bloody.
I know, but I do love them. But the endings are always so like he doesn't know how to end a movie, you know? Like the last one, The Hateful Eight or whatever it was. Is that what it was called?
Yeah. The Western.
Yeah. The ending, it's just like his endings are weird, but this has like Leo DiCaprio. It has
Brad
Pitt, Margot Robbie. It has Kurt Russell.
Al Pacino.
It's crazy. That's wild.
I mean, this guy can get anyone he wants to star in his movies.
I will definitely watch it.
It's gonna be really bloody.
Yeah, Django was pretty bad. I love Inglourious Basterds. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
I finally went back and watched like his first one, the black and white one. It's like a murder. It's like a cop mystery kind of thing. It's all shot in a single room. It's called Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah,
where they have like Mr. Pink, Mr. White.
Yeah. That's like Quentin Tarantino's first movie.
I didn't know that was his first.
Super low budget.
That's a great movie.
Great movie. It's literally the whole movie is shot in one scene. There's not one take. There's one scene that the whole movie's in. It's just like that warehouse. That's like the entire movie.
Yeah.
And like the driveway outside of it. It was like super low budget.
At the beginning when Steve Buscemi is complaining about tipping.
Yeah, I love him. But yeah, that one looks pretty wild. Saw Endgame too. That was great.
Oh, nice.
Marvel movies are super fun and awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the last few
have been really good. And then shout out to anyone out there who knows Dark Crystal because Netflix is making a series. We were looking at that yesterday. It's like the most random series ever. I sent it to my dad and my brother yesterday, and we were all freaking out because it's just like we grew up with like DVDs, like a few DVDs and a bunch of VHSs, and we had random movies that we just watched a million times. Like I wasn't allowed to watch Simpsons growing up. You know, because like inappropriate. And then somehow we had like The Mask with Jim Carrey and like Cameron Diaz. So I've seen that movie like 25 times. And Dark Crystal was another one of those. And it's like a fantasy one by Jim Henson. And they have puppets and stuff. But it looks like Netflix is doing an awesome job with it. So if anyone was in my boat and watched that growing up, I'm sure they squealed just like I did when they saw that. Because it's a really cool, very like original kind of fantasy world. So
very nice.
Pretty excited to see that. All right, let's get to it.
You got me distracted from the topics with all this movie talk. Okay. Do we talk about Tailwind 1.0?
Oh, should we do the DHH thing?
Yeah, we
just want to get it off my chest.
Sure.
I haven't actually processed it enough, but I just feel like I need to talk about it. But so I watched DHH's keynote from RailsConf this year, which is always worth watching, even if you disagree with it. And that's one of the things I like about DHH is that I actually find I disagree with him more and more, like every year, kind of, which kind of makes me sad because he's kind of like whining a lot now. And but I still really appreciate his thoughts and obviously like have a lot of respect for what he's done with Rails. But this keynote has a bunch of stuff, and there's some really good stuff. You know, we were talking about the passion projects and working on open source that you love for no other reason than that, and it gives you energy and not coming at it with like a calculus of costs and benefits and stuff. And I feel like, you know, you and I can get caught up in that where we're always trying to work on the most important thing, but it can be draining. Like if that's all you do, sometimes you just want to like hack on a dashboard, you know, with React and Mirage. And so that's fun. Like it's energizing, right? Mm-hmm. He was talking about how Rails is basically just that for him, and it always has been. So
I haven't watched a keynote, but what it's like his like creative outlet.
yes, and he's kind of pushing back against trying to bring marketplace economics to the world of open source. He thinks it's like tarnishing it. And so he had given his keynote, and then GitHub came out with a sponsorship thing, and then he basically was like having a field day with it, saying, I don't even know, believe me, I didn't know that this was going to happen. Like, you know, and he was kind of talking down on it or whatever. Whereas I was really excited to see that, even though people have pointed out some issues with it, I still think there's needs to be so much innovation in this area to figure out how to do sustainable open source. And he said even this term like sustainable open source is problematic from construction because sustainable implies already some sort of transactional nature, implying that there's something to sustain. And he's saying one of the beautiful things about open source is like there is nothing to sustain because you don't owe me anything for using Rails and I don't owe you anything. You know, he talks about how he used to do the marketing game and talk about Rails and try to sell it and treat open source like a product, which is what we've talked about a bunch on this podcast as being a very good thing. And he's basically saying that older he's gotten, it's like he's realized he wants to keep the domain of open source free from all of that stuff. Any obligation, any expectation, any sort of management, anything like that. He talks about a time when he kind of went down and he was working on Basecamp and he was at a low point, and contributing to Rails and doing the community stuff was like energizing to him, and it was like an outlet, a creative outlet. So, you know, he's basically making the argument that it should be kept free from any sort of discussion of sustainability.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like, I think my first question here is like, if you're making that statement about Rails, maybe there's like strengths about Rails that allow that to exist, like that ecosystem to thrive, where it shouldn't be about sustainability. But to say like a blanket statement that all OSS should follow that strikes me as there are
generalized.
Yeah, there are projects that won't have Rails as strengths.
Yeah,
and they could suffer from not doing marketing and not treating it as a product.
Yeah. And you know, he was talking about how like, yeah, there's burnout and stuff like that, but it's more like you need to understand that you don't owe anything to anybody and no one owes anything to you. Now, we've talked about boundaries on the podcast as well, about how when you put stuff out there, it doesn't mean you're entitled. People are entitled to your labor and free labor. And he's like, yeah, that's a problem as well. But the point is, there is no free labor because there's no labor. It's like it's a pure labor of love, right? So he's kind of he's making that strong point that basically the way we would say you need to have good boundaries and not let people control your time or whatever is kind of how he would say, like, yeah, if you keep it a labor of love, then it's never going to be a source of stress or burnout, right? He was saying how he's been burned out not from overworking hours, but from a mismatch of values. We actually touched on that like 2 weeks ago, I think. Mm-hmm. And so he's saying basically that's one way of, you know, saying the boundaries thing, which is like he's arguing that open source should be this labor of love that comes from your passions and your desires only. You don't enter into the realm of marketplace transactions, and so you never become indebted to anybody. So my problem with this is like he was able to work on Rails for a variety of reasons, one of them being he worked on a really successful business that he built and worked super hard to do, but he found himself in a situation where he could work a lot on open source during his working hours. And at the end of the day, like he said, there are tons of stories of burnout, and it continues. I can promise you it's going to keep happening every year. And so his notion that open source should be purely a labor of love and it shouldn't be thought of as a product or transactional is cold comfort to everyone who is suffering burnout today and trying to square that circle, trying to make what they love doing in open source sustainable and make it actually work given the real constraints of their job and their home life and all of those things. So I just feel like he came out, he was using like inductive logic too much, where he looked at his case And then he tried to generalize it to everybody. But I actually think the general case looks very different from his case.
You know, I consumers of open source don't really look at open source as like labor of love.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm going to hire people to keep this open source project going because our business actually depends on it, and it's a huge risk for us.
And even companies that don't hire, they're just individual users are like, hey, this doesn't work like this. Like, it is like a transaction. There is a product mentality there. You're using a product. And, you know, we've talked about, like, if you don't want to run a product, then you don't have to. And you can still open source your thing, but you should be clear about the expectations you're setting for your users. If you're doing something that's purely a labor of love and you want to share it because you just want to, that's fine. But most open source projects are not, most popular open source projects, most open source projects that are actually used are not that. They are not put onto GitHub with doc sites and versioning to communicate that this is just something that you can use. No, they are a product that is depended on by people. Like,
just think about the way they're talked about. Like, oh, this is the best way to load data. This is the best way to write an API server.
Right.
Like you're mentally setting up the
user.
Yeah, for like, oh, transition to this open source project. Use this open source project to solve these problems. So it's no longer,
right.
You're treating it like a product right from there. And the way that open source is, that's how open source is talked about on Twitter.
Yes.
It is not talked about as like, oh, this is just a spike, something that I was interested in, and may or may not maintain it.
Right. And it's also the way it's thought about by much of the developing world that's not on Twitter, because most developers are not on Twitter, and yet they still use open source. And if there's a bug, they see it as a problem. Like that is they might see themselves as entitled to a fix, but at the end of the day, like at the very least, they are a user of that product. It's a product. It's a product relationship.
The reason I like mentioning Twitter here, by the way, is you actually get to see like what words the author of the library uses to describe it, and they all treat it as
right. And DHH did as well, and he even admitted that. He said he's still working on that or whatever. But you know, he does this thing where he's like, you know, he talks about debt, and he talks about like debtors and how there's this old notion in like a debt-free society that's not marketplace based, that's more like a utopian vision. And he's kind of drawing this this analogy because he wants open source to stay like this little utopian part of society, and he wants to protect that. And he says there's this notion of Jubilee, which I know from the Bible, but it might be in other texts that he read, which is basically a day where you just clear everyone's debts. So like the day of Jubilee happens like every, 40 years or something, and everyone's debts just are erased. And so he was basically saying, I declare Jubilee, nobody owes me anything for anything you've gained through using Rails, right? So he's suspending anything that you owe, any of your debts are just gone. And so his point is that let's keep this like this utopian thing that's like not, there's no expectations, there's no transactions, right?
Yeah, but
the problem is the opposite side, right? Which is like, yeah, I don't feel like I owe you anything, but like, it's not that I feel like I owe you anything for Rails. It's that when people, the users, feel owed something because of the way that the expectations have been set up. In the same way, if a cup of coffee is transactional, you pay money for it, and if you get like a cold cup of coffee or water, like you would feel wronged, and your expectations will be violated. Just because you don't pay money for using Angular, like you still have expectations, and people can still feel wronged. And you can't just tell them like, oh, let's keep this free. Like this is like a little utopian corner of our world, like, which I think that's fine that's an admirable goal or whatever. But I just think it's not realistic based on how people actually use open source, and it's not helpful to people who are suffering burnout, and it's not helpful to people who are users who are having their expectations violated. It's not helpful to anyone when companies or individuals rely on projects that become unmaintained because of any of this stuff. Like that's not something to be celebrated. Like that's a bad situation. That's a huge pain point. Like companies that rely on unmaintained software, like unmaintained open source, that's a huge pain point that needs to be solved.
And there might be a solution that is very transactional out of that problem.
Yeah.
And so you can't just dismiss it. Hey, also too, like, what about, there's got to be some open source maintainers out there that have different preferences and that are just like, hey, I actually want, I want you to feel like I owe you things.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
I'm going to charge you for my open source.
Yeah, Mike Penham.
Yeah.
Pernam. What is it? Penham?
Sidekick guy.
Yeah, sidekick guy. Sidekick Mike.
There you go.
Absolutely. You know, absolutely. I just think like the fact that open source doesn't involve, most of the time doesn't involve exchange of money, doesn't mean it's not transactional. Like whatever has organically surfaced and grown into what open source is in 2019, it is very transactional. Like, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like I think transactions and the notion of a marketplace is actually a great way to solve like social problems and to organize people's preferences. Like we're not using money to do that. Most companies in a market economy do, and I think that's also works very well for people who are trying to, how much rye bread does the baker make? How much pumpernickel? How much white? How much wheat? Well, one way they know that is by how much people buy. And so if one type of bread is more profitable than another, that's a way for the baker to know the preferences of their customers. We don't have money, profit and loss system in open source right now, but we do have other things that maintainers use and that users use. Users use GitHub stars and popularity as proxies for those things. Maintainers use issues and upvotes for proxies for their users' preferences. And the problem of how to aggregate preferences across the users of a library doesn't go away if you just say no money's involved and therefore this should be a utopian part of the community. So I just felt like it was a little I don't know if disingenuous is the right word, but it was like cold comfort. Like if anyone's listening to this and you're not in a spot where you have tons of money and you can work a bunch of your working hours on your open source project, it becomes popular enough that a lot of the burdens of maintenance are shifted off of you, then like none of this is actually going to be helpful to you. It felt like too theoretical. It bothered me. Like watching it bothered me because I think this is like a huge problem in like tech culture today. It's like a huge problem. Yeah. Like on many angles, there's lots of really good open source software that could be developed that's not because of incentives and compensation misalignment and all that stuff. There's a lot of like personal suffering going on in the form of like burnout and other things like that. So I just felt like he was like very dismissive of all those problems, and they're like very real problems in my opinion. So it is worth watching though. And there's some other points he makes that are kind of tangential to those that I thought were really good, but the overall thrust of the message I was pretty down on.
It'd be interesting to know like the other folks that are involved in the day-to-day of Rails, how they view that.
Right. Right. Do they take his same utopian perspective? Yeah. Oh, all the work I do performance tuning Rails, because everyone keeps bothering me about it, is like my labor of love, and I'm fine with not having any reward for it or anything like that. And like just the work we've been doing on Mirage over the past few weeks is directly a result of us trying to prioritize those things because we see a path to sustainability with it. It wouldn't happen otherwise. So yes, we want to end up in a situation where we can provide better free software, right? But there has to be something to sustain it because my landlord doesn't take,
GitHub stars,
even if that is a labor of love for me or something like that. Same with Ember Animated. Like I did some work on the Ember Animated docs, and I was able to put like 2 months of work into that and the trainings and roll back a lot of my learnings into something that everyone could use. And now we are starting to make an Ember Animated series, some of which is free and then some of which is going to be premium. But that's the whole reason I'm doing it. Yeah. And as I learn more about it, I'll be able to add resources back to the docs for everyone. But if there wasn't any sustainable outcome or incentive to do it, it wouldn't be worth my time because I have to pay rent and eat. And you know what I'm saying? So
even,
it seems so obvious on the one hand. I get what he's saying, but like, come on. I kind of want to just say like,
Sure, but so I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah.
Let's remove the money and the sustainability and the paying your landlord from this. I think even deeper, you want feedback from users because there's pride in building the right thing.
That's a good point.
And so this idea that
you're off in your basement, like painting a portrait, and it's just what you absolutely love doing, or reading books.
But what if you love making people
happy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What if you love solving other people's problems?
Yeah.
Then you can still be transactional.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Marketplace is a very good way to find out the highest impact you can make, the hardest problems you can. I mean, everything we've learned about business in the last 2.5 years. What is it? What is it now? It's like, what's the best way I can help this person? Yeah. How do I ask the right questions to find out their biggest pain points? Like that is the market's answer to the problem of social arrangement and allocation of resources. You could be doing many things. If what you want to be doing is helping people in a big way, there's lots of concepts from markets that help you do that. So yeah, just felt like he started with the socialist stuff last year, and now he's reading that by Gruber and all these other people and utopian idea. Whether it's all socialist or all like free market, the people who bother me, it's just too theoretical. That bothers me on either end of the spectrum. It's like it's like next year's going to be if the jump from this year to next year is the same as the jump from last year to this year, he might as well go speak at an academic conference and talk to like the other eight journalists, reviewers that actually care about what he has to say, because like it's getting farther and farther disconnected from reality, which is like why I left academia in the first place, because it's just not helpful. Like, go get a job, you know? It's like, that's what you want to tell the academics. Now he has a job, but the stuff he's saying almost makes it seem like, anyways, just want to get that off my chest.
So time to abandon Rails?
No, actually, that stuff made me, not that stuff, but the other stuff I saw from RailsConf was like, made me really miss Rails. There was, what were we looking at? Where it was like the whole, the Phoenix stuff. The Phoenix stuff made me want to go back to like, try to build like a Rails app, because they share that whole app, simplistic. How can we get rid of the code, not the product?
Productivity.
Yes. So, and there's still so much of that embedded in the Rails culture that doesn't matter if DHH goes off the edge of a cliff. It's not going to matter.
Yeah.
It's completely ingrained in the ethos, you know?
You know, the RailsConf stuff is pretty cool. I noticed on YouTube there's so many talks.
From this year's.
Mm-hmm. It looked like there were 20 plus talks a day.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. I love that because I can just pick and choose.
Yeah. GraphQL stuff. I've never been to RailsConf, actually.
Yeah, they're by.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That surprises me. Wasn't it like in Minneapolis?
This year it was.
But not usually?
No, they do a new place every year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's one of their big things is go to a new city.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. You've never been to a RailsConf?
I've never been to a RailsConf.
Mr. Ryan Rails over there.
Yeah. Been to some Ruby conferences.
Yeah.
They're good. They're about what you expect. They're like the Ruby version of EmberConf.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. All right. What shall we talk about next?
Oh, I have one. I refactored. I don't know where this is going to go, but I refactored a bunch of dynamic tests the other day. So I refactored a component, and then my test started failing, and I went in to fix the tests. Like I expected them to fail. I was changing a bunch of stuff in the component. I was changing test IDs. Right? I was changing the HTML layout.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a bunch of dynamic tests, and I refactored those all to just really, really stupid tests. Like there's asserting that there's like 3 users in the row, and some of these tests were like looking at how many users were in the Mirage database, and then asserting that the same number of users were displayed. There are other tests that were like, let me find the 5th product in Mirage and then assert against the 5th product in the page. And I think they made sense. There were a lot in like loops and stuff like that. So I made them like really, really stupid.
Yeah.
Just refactored them out. And it really improved my understanding of what the code was doing.
Yeah, totally.
And it just really improved it. Like when I would look at these tests that have like for each, and you know when like the first parameter to like an assertion and the second parameter to assertion are both variables. Mm-hmm. It's like really hard to realize.
Oh, totally.
but so if one's a primitive, like a string, and the other's a variable, you can kind of start to piece things together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt really good about that refactor.
That's great.
I was like, this code is simpler it's simpler from like a documentation point of view. I mean, the file's way bigger. It was probably like 300 lines when I started, and now it's like 600. And I felt like my understanding of the code was better. So there were basically two things I wanted to talk about here. One is I'm doing a big refactor on a component, and then I go off and I start rewriting the tests. That seems bad. That seems like really bad. So I'm wondering if I should have like looked at the tests first. And
was the component refactoring to change behavior, or was it truly a refactoring where you didn't change external behavior? Why were you refactoring it?
There were a few bugs in the component, so it did not change
The behavior.
external behavior from the UI's point of view,
Yeah.
which is what all the tests were. All the tests were UI acceptance tests. So the tests
Should have still passed.
yeah. However, some of the test IDs like didn't make sense, and as I was doing the refactor, they were just old, they were just like old and misaligned. And you know, this is the thing. Like I had worked on this part of the app months ago. Other people had worked on it. It's just kind of like
No, it's hard. Sometimes you get in there and you want to start changing stuff for sure. I guess like if I.
By the way, I know like the purist point of view here is like refactor all the tests, so remove don't change any code.
Well, I was going to say actually write a failing. You say you're fixing a bug.
Yeah.
All tests pass, old component, old test. Write a failing test.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Then that's one commit, and then fix the bug. That's another commit. All test green. Now you can just go down and refactor.
But I think
when you want to rewrite the test, that's.
But I think you do it in steps. Like you rewrite the tests, you remove all the dynamic parts of the test without changing any of the code, so that you know if the test suite is green again.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no real way to know if your new tests actually cover the behavior of the old tests.
Especially when there's like a lot of like, it's just really hard to tell what the old tests are doing.
I think that's a really good point. I think that just speaks to like we try to like we've for a long time we've said, and others have said this as well, like dry in tests is like you don't care about that. That's like exactly what you're talking about, because you just want it to be the dumbest thing.
Yeah.
The only time I've actually done dynamic tests still do.
This was I know that in Mirage's ORM there are dynamic tests, so that was my next question.
Yeah. That's the only place, because I wanted to cover every permutation of relationships. And it's funny because like let's just say you have a one-to-many, user has many posts, and then you want to test the methods like user create post updates like the amount of posts, or like post.user equals new user, and like it needs to update the old user's post to null, like it removes that from the old user's post, adds it to new, it updates the inverse. So just with a user and a post, they can be in like 6 states with respect to each other. You can have like a post points to like a new post points to a new user, a new post points to a null user, a saved post points to a new user, saved post points to a null user, or saved user, null user, saved user, unsaved user, null user, saved post, unsaved post, null post. And so when you're testing the methods, like, and that's just one relationship. There's like one-to-many, one-to-one, many-to-many, one-to-one reflexive, many-to-many reflexive. There's polymorphic. And so it gets pretty tricky. So
is there anything when you were writing these tests, is there any way you like organize the test suite? Like, did you like go comment heavy here, or just to like,
I just have like each situation, each like scenario has a module that's like, it's called like setup or something like that. And it has the different scenarios so that the test can say basically for each scenario, you know, you call like get data or whatever it is, and you get like a user and a post, and then you're in that state, and you can say like user.create post, and then you assert like the old post, if it exists, has the thing nulled out, the new post has the right relationship set. So I mean, Ed came in there one time and like added a whole thing, and he was able to understand it, so that made me feel pretty good. Like literally no one had seen that code except for me, but he came in and like fixed some crazy bug and like added a whole new scenario or something like that. But I think that's like a pretty unique case for apps I've never done. I don't think, maybe if you get blamed that stuff you were talking about, you would find my name. But I typically would never do dynamic stuff like that in tests. Even like the thing you said where, let's say Mirage starts off with 3 users, and then you go to like a new user form, you click submit, and then you assert like there's 4 users. I would never do like mirage.db.users.length is equal to like the number of table rows. I would say like, no, I started with 3 and I expect to have 4, so I just put 4.
Yes. Yeah, same. I think this was just code that had been worked on forever.
Sure.
Had a million features added.
Yeah.
And just, you kind of go in there, you do like kind of like a quick hit and run on a feature, and then you kind of maybe copy and paste a test or add some dynamic things.
That's interesting.
I think it's also interesting, like when I go to like in a real world app, when I go to like refactor these things, especially with a test suite that's big and has some like older tests that maybe aren't dry and maybe aren't perfect, the whole like, oh, write a failing test, then refactor this, then do that. It's like, that's less, I'm not really sure. There are certain cases where that works really well.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that's like doesn't work. It does. It works really well in certain cases, but
sometimes it's just hard to like,
yeah,
because you don't know enough about it. You're saying? I mean, it seems like a pretty good approach to me.
I don't know. I've been trying to
think how, like thinking about this exact thing that you just did. Would it have been possible before to write a failing test for the bug you knew?
I don't think so. Like the bug. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's always possible, right? There's some creative solution. The bug was like,
not like was it actually possible? Like putting yourselves in with the knowledge you had before you rewrote and got a deeper understanding of the component. What would it have looked like to try to write a test for a failing test for the bug?
So the bug was, it was like a rendering issue, and the thing kept blowing away divs and adding new divs to the page.
Oh.
So I guess you would like assert, like literally assert the Ember IDs aren't changing.
It was the clock thing?
Yeah, it was a clock thing.
And what was the side effect? What was the effect that the user was seeing?
The user would click on a pop-up that was attached to an HTML element. That HTML, there was a rendering bug here where that HTML element would get blown away inside of an each loop every tick of the clock, and a new element would appear. And so that pop-up that was attached to it would also get blown away. So
it would flicker?
The bug from the user's point of view is they would click it, get like their little menu pop-up, and then the next time the clock ticked, which was anywhere between 1 and 5 seconds, it would just disappear. So you would like click a menu and it would like disappear. It would like appear closed.
Okay.
If you can imagine that.
So that's the failing test.
So the failing test would be like click, open the menu.
Yeah, menu stays open until the
wait
user
for the next await the next clock tick.
Yeah, ideally, if you could like in the Ember Animated test where you can say like time.advance.
Fast forward,
If I click a thing and I leave it open for 5 seconds, nothing happens.
So this is again, this goes back to like, I think you can always write the failing test, but when I have to fix this bug, like I think the clock service disables itself in testing mode because it's like, you don't want the run loop. You don't want your app to just be waiting for the next clock tick.
Right.
So like the reality is like when I'm coming to fix this bug.
Yeah. You already have to have a pretty good understanding of
what exactly is happening
to be able to reproduce the bug in a test, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think you'd want to be at that level and not like asserting against Ember IDs, right? You'd want to have the pop-up thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Since that's a bug that the user's reporting.
Right. Yes.
But it can definitely be hard for sure.
It's just it's interesting how definitely been trying to do more TDD.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yep.
But I'm not convinced that every situation is solvable in TDD, and I think it's easy to say, oh, write a failing test. But
yeah. You know, what was interesting is that we were working on the Mirage extraction, and that was an interesting case because we want to pull out all of the core logic of Mirage into an @mirage.js/server repo, which is going to contain the core logic, and then Ember CLI Mirage is going to be consuming that dependency. It's just an NPM dependency. And we want to do it in a way that's fully backwards compatible. And so that means Ember CLI Mirage's tests are passing. Mm-hmm. And so we extracted it and then had Ember CLI Mirage depend on it and then have its tests run. And for that to all work, Ember CLI Mirage needs to like re-export a lot of that classes from its own namespace. But then most of it was pretty easy actually, but there was times where we get tripped up and it's tough because the only feedback you have is through Ember CLI Mirage. Like you're working on this other repo and you actually don't have test coverage for it. So like you want to fix something in Mirage server, and the way you know it works is by running Ember CLI Mirage's test suite. And so there was this decision where you're like, really you want more feedback here, and you want to actually start moving a lot of the tests over so you make sure things are wired up right in Mirage server. But it felt like it wouldn't have been a good move. Too much is changing it. It felt like actually the best thing to do was like just keep all the tests in Ember CLI Mirage. Make sure you don't break backwards compatibility at all.
Great, very similar to
so that felt the best way to do it because once you start changing that, then you want to refactor that because that thing's blah blah blah. It's like you don't want to do any of that stuff. You want to put all that off. But that comes with a trade-off where you don't get the feedback maybe in the way you'd want to. So we decided to just keep it like that, so that we can just do one step at a time and make sure all Ember CLI Mirage is exactly the same API for everybody, even though the majority of the code has been extracted. And then once that's true, then we can start moving tests over, and then that will give us the ability to refactor Mirage server, knowing that it's one consumer at this point. Ember CLI Mirage hasn't broken. So that was another case where it's just not always. And I'm sure if you like thought, if I didn't think this was going to happen as fast as it did, and it did end up happening fast, then you could think about like a more, you could break that down into more steps maybe, and have like more test feedback along the way. But yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Cool.
So yeah, how are we doing on time? Probably one more topic.
Yeah, we're at 37.
Cool. Yeah, the Mirage server stuff is interesting, but I think we'll have more to say on that in a few weeks.
Yeah. Clarify Octane is not ready. This is a you topic.
Oh yeah, I heard about this was on our friend Dave Wasmer's and Ilya's new podcast where they talk about the tech that they're using to build Crash, and also talk a lot about Ember, and they were wanting to try some new Octane stuff, but ran into stuff and had to like pull back. And they made this point that like, they listened to our podcast and they were like, oh, I know, Sam and Ryan are pretty conservative when it comes to that stuff. And, we just had Katie on the podcast last week and she was saying the same thing. Also, I was just reading Robert Jackson's new blog posts for Ember.js 2019. And, he was recapping the whole module unification scoping down thing that happened. Mm-hmm. And he was pointing out like, this is pretty painful because there's a lot of code out there that is written to accommodate module unification behind a feature flag. So at this point, there's basically a ton of tech debt in like the ecosystem, especially people who jumped on that to try to help. And that was like good on them, like helping spearhead that stuff. But at this point, and like that is one of the reasons we don't move forward on these things. Like someone had submitted a bunch of code in a PR to either Mirage or Tailwind to get it working with a module unification app. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this yet. And lo and behold, like unstable software can be unstable sometimes. And like, I get that there's a tension between helping people move it forward and test and stuff, but like, this is why we are more conservative, tend to be more conservative, right? Is because if it comes down to like your product priorities and like testing bleeding edge tech, like we just don't care about the bleeding edge stuff that much. We don't care being a year behind.
Right.
Like we don't care about that. That doesn't bother me at all.
Especially if it's what is like the architecture that gets unlocked.
Right.
And in the Ember SPA world, I feel like basically the last big unlock was what?
Contextual components.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
Weren't we just
exactly
talking about
thing.
this? I think we were just talking about this with someone.
But yeah. We were talking. Yes, we were.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that was something I was eager to get on.
Yes.
If Ember Data, 3.12 came out and it had like bulk operation, okay, let's drop everything we're doing.
The architecture change.
Architecture change.
And it improves the product. And
yes.
That's where our decision stepped from.
But we'd still wait until it was released. Or maybe we would try it in beta or something like that, right? Anyways, they were saying that they had started using some of the Octane features and then they ran up against these walls where it was incomplete and like incoherent is the word that they like to use for it, like the core team. Like now there's a little bit of incoherence in that component and templates are co-located, but like we still have routes and controllers, but that's like a scoping issue. It's like deadline issue. We want to get Octane out and we can't keep staying in design mode forever. It's been long enough. So we want to ship something and iterate on it. I think that's a good decision. anyways, they had started using some of the Octane stuff and ran up in these walls, and they were like, oh yeah, I know there's many people in the community who are conservative. So like they said something like, oh, even Ryan and Sam are like squarely in the pre-Octane world. And I would say, yeah, absolutely we are. And there's no pressure on our consulting projects, our personal stuff, EmberMap.com, to move into Octane because we have a lot going on. And things are still in flux. So I just the reason I wrote that down as a note is because obviously there's been a lot of like messaging going out around Octane, and it's super exciting and all the stuff that was said at EmberConf, but like it's not, just for anyone listening who is feeling at all anxious about being behind on anything or wanting to learn these new patterns, like we're going to make a video series on Octane when it comes out. We're going to make like a refactoring guide, like upgrading it. It's probably just going to be upgrading EmberMap to like new patterns and like making a video for each aspect of Octane. And it's just not ready yet. It could be like who knows when it's actually going to come out. It's probably going to come out this year at some point. But you don't actually know yet, and it's definitely not ready today, even though a lot of the features are in the the release version of Ember, and you can use them, things like angle brackets and other things like that.
That's just what I was about to say. I think that Octane is not an all or nothing thing, and as these features land, we'll take advantage of them.
Yes and no. I mean, we tried the angle brackets because they were interesting, but we always want to be able to look at the guides and say that the guides is how we write Ember apps.
Interesting, because I think that native classes have landed.
No.
Or they're not.
No.
Didn't they aren't they in like 3.10?
Yeah, they're in 3.10, but they're not in the guides.
I think I might start my next time an Ember app.
You'd add a new
3.10. I might add.
That's a different thing, though. That's starting a 3.10 app is different than saying if we were to like upgrade EmberMap to 3.10.
I would not upgrade EmberMap to 3.10
and then replace
for the sole purpose of getting them.
No, but if you did upgrade it to 3.10, you wouldn't go back and refactor everything to ES6 classes.
No. But a new component, I would make an ES6 class.
I think I would do that once it's in the guides because there's going to be incoherence. In the same way when angle brackets first came out, there was no way to do nested angle brackets. Now there is. So now that feature is coherent. Are we going to know when it's truly coherent with everything? They're getting rid of curly input right now. So right, by the time Octane comes out, there's going to be angle bracket input, right? There's probably things with ES6 classes that don't work right now.
Right. Like, I should clarify that if I ran into something where I had to do like an ES6 class, but then I had to like, I don't know, re-import it and reopen it,
and like action didn't work the same way.
Yeah, then I wouldn't use it. But I think if the way that angle brackets just work now today.
The first time they didn't though.
The first time they didn't, right. But today they do. So
we think they do, except for input and text area and link to. Except there's an RFC that's been accepted, so that's been being implemented. My whole point is like we don't code like that. Like we wait until the line in the sand is drawn. It's different for us to take advantage of a feature for play, for an experiment, for an EmberMap video. But when it comes to like production apps, and obviously EmberMap is kind of like our playground too. But if it was a client app, or if we were at a job where we were before, like those things we are very conservative about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think I might use angle brackets though when I get to the version where the nested angle brackets.
For me was a big one. Yeah.
Yes, because all of our Ember apps have nested components.
But that's an example of something we didn't know until we tried it when the first one came out. Just my point is like that. If I were completely heads down focused on product work, like most companies are, keep your ear open for this Octane stuff, but don't let it distract you at all from building your app. And then once Octane comes out, you can talk about what's the way to get these new patterns into our app, and even when Octane comes out, there's not a massive like hit the brakes and refactor everything at all. Everything old is still going to work again. Yeah. But it's like, okay, which of the features, now that everything is coherent, which of the ones is going to bring the most value to our company? Which ones can we code mod? All right, let's do that one first.
I worked with someone that always said something that I use to test these situations. He said that, what can we do with this now that we couldn't do with it before?
Yeah.
And I think you need an answer.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And that tells you if you should refactor to this stuff.
I think there's actually a good answer there for the angle bracket stuff, and that is like people getting confused about passing in HTML attributes versus JavaScript data, and all of the attribute binding stuff like goes away. It's incredible.
Yeah,
like the @ for clear. It's like so much. It's so nice.
Yeah,
it's super nice.
I might be a little ahead of the guides, but I do definitely consider myself like super conservative with this Ember stuff.
Yep.
But I might be willing to try stuff before.
I mean, if you look at our apps, all I'm saying is there's basically 97% of it would be from the guides, except where we disagree with the guides. No, except where the guides doesn't answer, right? But like whether you're talking ES6 class, we haven't used ES6 classes we haven't been using Ember decorators. We haven't been using all these things.
Yep.
Right? Because we didn't use module unification. There's people out there who've been writing like module unification apps for like 2 years. Like we would never do that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm talking about.
I mean, that I consider
modifiers and for actions.
Ultra aggressive.
But I'm just saying, like,
what is the opposite of conservative? Progressive?
Like liberal with your constraints, you know? Freewheeling.
Reckless.
Careless, yeah. Carefree. No, my point was all that stuff. My point is just that there are, like, we shouldn't, it's not like we've never seen this before.
Yeah. Yes.
Things that come up, there are often things that are unanticipated about them, and they end up being much more difficult than everyone thought. The last 20% is actually the last 80%. And so there are things that are in Octane that probably have similar characteristics to things like Ember decorators and module unification that we don't know yet because they haven't marked their stamp of approval. And that's the whole point of additions. That's like the whole point of additions. And so I just wanted to bring that up because like I think it's important for people not to feel like, oh, I tried this. We had a new app at work and I used the Octane blueprint and there's an error and it's like sucks. If you like doing that stuff, that's great. And they need people to do that stuff to help fix it and move it forward. But if you don't, you shouldn't feel like, if I made a new Ember app now and I taught someone like as of 3.0, it's not a problem. It's like the fundamentals are the same. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Like that's
architecture.
Yeah, architecture hasn't changed.
Yep.
Angle brackets are sweet though. Like once Octane's out and angle brackets are like done, I'm gonna like code mod all of EmberMap because I feel like I just want to see one way to invoke components. That's it. Like I to me that feels important that there's one way to invoke a component. Feels like if there's two ways, it's just weird.
But for today, you would have two ways. Like for today,
we have an angle bracket button in EmberMap,
and you're all right with that.
I'm okay with that. It bothers me in the same way that it bothers me that we have tachyons classes as custom Tailwind variables still because we haven't refactored it. But that's because we don't really. We spend our EmberMap time making videos instead of working on the site.
Moon Gray will never die.
No, actually, Moon Gray's dead. Moon Gray and Silver, those were the first to go. It's really like the padding. It's the weird padding things and some other things that are still there. But I have a plan for that too. Tailwind 1.0, getting rid of the config. Like part of Tailwind 1.0 is like not putting the burden of the config on the user and nudging everyone to use the same shared default config with slight modifications instead of giving you all the config and making you an owner of it, because that's exactly what happens is like you're not as thoughtful about these things, and so it's easy to just, we need this or whatever, and now all of a sudden you have like all this config variables that like are great for your site, but maybe if you had thought about them in a higher level way, you could have just shared the community solution there.
What does that look like? Does that look like
all the padding and margin values, just using the defaults, maybe adding a few more, so things like that.
And if I, as a user, wanted to override those, how would I?
Oh, you can just extend it. You can just you'll have a single Tailwind file that starts off like empty config, and you can just say like theme.spacing.extend, and then you add your new value there.
Rather than the blueprint generating.
Rather than basically eject. You basically it's like basically ejecting.
Cool. Very cool.
And taking ownership of it. So that was like the idea there. So I think it'll be good.
I wanted to ask you what Tailwind 1.0 has been getting a lot of buzz. So what are the good good things that you like about it? That you're excited. What are you excited about with it?
Tailwind 1.0 is awesome. It's mostly a refinement of the last version of Tailwind. they redid the color palette. They redid a lot of the config values to something that's even better. So that'll be good. More, it's a philosophy change, which is basically, don't eject immediately. We're going to take more ownership and responsibility for the config values. It's basically like they're becoming a design system, which we've said before is like the gateway drug to Tailwind is like text to line in the developer experience. The actual benefit in the long run is like you end up with better designed sites than you could ever do it on yourself.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they're becoming a universal design system for websites because like they're picking values that work for all sorts of custom designs, like completely custom designs that look nothing alike and yet share many of the same fundamental scale values. So the idea is Adam basically said it was always kind of, cowardly of me to force the entire config on the user because that let me be lazy in terms of the defaults I chose because they were just generated values, but like your values are your site, your values, you choose them. But now it's like actually most people should be using, if we come up with a reasonable spacing scale, it should serve almost everyone's needs almost all the time. And that's like a much better, it's like a conventions over configuration thing, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So given that, I think it doesn't make sense for Ember CLI Tailwind to generate all of those values in your project. Even though it's nice to reference them, maybe there's another way to solve that problem where you can reference them from within code. Because I do like that it doesn't break the coding flow. But I think...
Yeah, like an IDE. I mean, this doesn't exist, but like an IDE thing that can, you can start typing a Tailwind class in it.
You could even generate a file that you can Command P that doesn't get shipped or something like that as a reference file.
It's like a doc file. Cool.
Something like that. But yeah, I think that problem is solved better in a different way. So I think what Ember CLI Tailwind is going to look like eventually is like much lighter. It's not going to scaffold out all of the directories in the file structure. And it's also going to expose the post CSS pipeline so that you can use other post CSS plugins. Right now it has like, it does its own post CSS thing, but it was always seen as like, those were all implementation details. And so you as a user of Ember CLI Tailwind don't know that it's using post CSS. You just get a Tailwind directory with all your values. And if you ever change them, your app rebuilds and you're good to go, which still should happen. But people reasonably want to be able to configure post CSS with other plugins. So
cool.
That's one of the goals, is make that easy. So we'll get around to that pretty soon. It's just, I want to just focus on one thing right now, and that's Mirage. So
nice.
Yeah, should be exciting though.
Very
Shall we wrap it?
Yeah.
Cool. Show notes can be found on
EmberMap.com/podcast.
Who done it?
Yeah. Like us on iTunes. Subscribe on YouTube. What else do we want to push? Oh, we have that.
I was trying to think of a joke like show notes can be found on like reactjspodcast.com or something. And I was just like, it's Friday. My brain is so slow. That's how long it took me to think of it. And it wasn't even that good.
Pretty bad. Wait, I do want to plug.
Show notes going to be found on Node client-side JS. That was pretty interesting.
Localhost 4200.
That's good. That's a great name. Why didn't we think about that?
I think
name of the podcast.
I think
localhost 4200.
Yeah.
Boom. There's your tribe.
I think there is like a localhost 3000
for Rails
website or something.
Interesting.
Yeah. I do want to plug the Ember Animated series.
Oh yeah, we just started that.
I think we mentioned it earlier, but that's yeah. Here, go.
Yeah, we just started that new series. First 3 episodes for free. Should definitely be valuable.
Ooh, both of our series just went off.
Our series, not our series. Wow. AI people. AI. The first 3 videos are free. They're up now. I'm going to have another 4 videos out really soon. Eventually the videos will start being paid as part of the EmberMap subscription, but we're going to just go through Ember Animated and, a bunch of stuff. It's going to be a bunch of videos covering like lots of aspects of the library, because the library is pretty, it's easy, and then it gets very powerful. And as it gets powerful, you have to really understand the complexities of it. Yeah.
It's definitely worth watching, because I've installed Ember Animated. I've used it in 3 apps. I've installed it in 2, and it's just worked.
It always just does what you expect.
Always just works.
Where
I kind of felt like with Liquid Fire, I would install. I kind of go through like I would install it, I would uninstall it, I would install it, I would. But yeah, Ember Animated is it's super fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just have some really simple fade out animations in an app I'm working on, and I love it.
Nice. Very cool. So yeah, check out that series. It'll be on the homepage, embermap.com. It'll be on /series. You can find it there, and we'll keep talking about that as we learn more stuff, because basically every time we talk about this, like just yesterday, right, we were talking about when you interrupt something, if a sprite is in the middle, if a transition is running, but there's no motion that is currently manipulating a sprite, from the perspective of Ember Animated, that sprite is gone. Doesn't matter. It doesn't influence future animations at all. So if you were to interrupt it halfway through, that sprite is like reset to 0. And that's true whether or not it's already finished a motion and it's been removed from the DOM, or it has a motion that has yet to be applied to it and it hasn't hit that yet. So that's where we were talking about this freeze motion thing. So anyways, like there's lots of cool stuff like that. And it's going to be fun having the video series as a sustainable way to learn more about Ember Animated, and try to port back some of the learnings that I do, take from this into the docs, also into the video series, so that more people can benefit from it. So
cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
it really is.
Cool. All right. Thanks so much for joining us this week. And we're probably going to skip next week, and then we'll be back the week after that.
Yep.
So we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.